Aloha and welcome to CM400C Week 2. In addition to learning about design patterns, in the next two lectures I will be covering Apple's Human Interface Guidelines. In the first lecture, I will talk about UI controls, and in the second lecture, I will talk about UI views. Let's get started. Before we begin, let's do a real quick review of what we learned last week. In this class, we'll be using user-centered design principles as part of our mobile design process. Remember that this requires designers to know everything they possibly can about their users. App goals should focus on accomplishing the following: solve a problem, captivate your users, and connect your users to a community. And lastly, there are four main types of apps: data, game, device, and utility. What is Apple's Human Interface Guidelines, or I'm going to refer to them as the HIG from now on? Apple put together the HIG to help both developers and designers create elegant and consistent UI and UX, or user experience, on Apple's mobile platforms. Although these guidelines were written by Apple, many of these guidelines can apply cross-platform. Beyond just being a guideline, the HIG offers its readers a philosophy about mobile UX by guiding designers through specific elements and principles when it comes to mobile design. Following conventions outlined in the HIG will undoubtedly contribute to the success of your app design. Users will be able to learn how to use your app within seconds or minutes of opening it, and accomplish tasks without stumbling through it. From a design perspective, the HIG offers techniques and suggestions to make your app intuitive, easy to learn, and consistent. You will also start building your mobile design and development terminologies. Remember that a consistent design contributes to a better user-centered design. Lastly, the HIG provides designers with guidance on standard sizes of UI elements such as buttons, images, as well as other UI elements for the iOS mobile platforms. What are controls? Controls are UI elements that have a specific purpose and a way of communicating something to the user. As you can see from the list, Apple has identified 12 different types of controls. Many of these controls are universal and are familiar to us. Something to keep in mind when including controls in your app design is deciding whether or not it's absolutely necessary. When adding any UI control to your interface, consider the following factors to help you decide whether it makes sense to include the control or other UI element. Purpose. What does the UI element serve to do? Affordance. Visual cues to signal to the user how to perform an interaction. And then interaction, the type of interaction. Is it pressing, inputting text, sliding? So think of all those things when you're designing and putting controls into your design. All right, so let's briefly scan over each of these controls. The system button is probably one of the most common controls that you will be including in your app design. Buttons are very important because they enable users to initiate an action, complete a task, navigate from screen to screen, and much more. System buttons can easily be stylized and customized to match with your app design. However, you don't want the button to get lost in the design, since that's what the user will be looking for to perform an action in your app. The detail disclosure button, pictured here in a table view, enables users to gain more information about a topic by pressing it. When composing a message, users can press the Content Add button to access their contacts rather than typing the contact's name using the keyboard. So here's the Edit menu, which I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with. Allows users to copy, paste, manipulate other tasks involving text. These are labels, and they're used to display static text. These are page controls, and it indicates to the user how many number of open views and which one is currently visible. So in this case, if it's highlighted in white, it's saying that the first page is visible to the user. For pickers, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, it displays a set of values from which the user can select one. Here's the date picker, allowing the user to select date and time. And these are progress indicators. So this is the activity indicator, and it just signals to the user that there's a task or something in progress. This is the progress bar here. It's just another way to show that something's in progress, perhaps something is downloading at the moment. This is the network activity indicator, which I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with. The refresh content control. So this is something for us where if we pull down our emails, it shows that it's going to display whatever new emails the user has. Segmented controls. This allows the user to toggle between different views. For segmented controls, you probably don't want to go over 2 to 3 segmented controls. Sliders. So this allows users to make adjustments to a value or process. So what's displayed here is a slider that allows the user to increase or decrease the display and brightness. Steppers, a button used to increase or decrease a value by a constant amount. Switches, which I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with. And text fields, which you guys are probably also very familiar with. Whether you've interacted with it on a website and or mobile device, as a designer, you want to consider the following when using a text field on the UI. Customizing a text field to help users understand how they should use it. You can display custom images on either the left or right side of the text field. In the text field example above, you see that the designer, if you look in this example here, it gives a clue to the user that you want to put company information regarding your contact there. So these are some of the things as a designer you can do for your user to make the experience easier and more understandable. As a designer, you want to consider what type of keyboard to display. So for example, for this keyboard, for inputting content, you're going to display sort of the standard keyboard that focuses on letters rather than numbers. That's it on HIG UI controls. In the next lecture, you will learn more about UI views. Aloha.